Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committee Meetings of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We begin with a meeting of the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. This will be followed by the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee.
I'm going to call our meeting of Public Works and Safety Standing Committee to order, and I'm going to thank all of my standing committee members for being here on what has turned out to be a really nice day. And we want to welcome everyone to the meeting. Public comment is welcome, and anyone wishing to speak on any item is welcome to do so when that item's up for discussion. You would have up to 3 minutes at the microphone at the podium to make your comments. We'd ask you to speak directly into the microphone for accurate recording purposes. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Roll call. Groneman? Here. Philbrook?
Here.
Markley? Here. Kane? Here. Johnson?
Here.
Bynum?
Here. We have no revisions on our agenda tonight. First order of business is May 20 minutes. May 20th. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those minutes are approved. 6 items on the agenda. Item 1 is an update on the Kansas City levee project. And who's here tonight? I've already, your name went in.
Commissioner Bynum, this is Trenton Fogelson. He's
I
with
know
our
Trenton.
wastewater division, but he is also on the Kansas City levees project because several of the pump stations are involved with that, as is Sarah White, who's not here this evening.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you. Trenton, you can take it away.
Sure, and I'm going to review, kind of start back at the beginning maybe just to make sure everybody understands the project. And then our goal is to come back on a roughly quarterly basis, depending on if there's more or less going on with the project, and keep everybody informed. So the Kansas City Levees project originally was called the 7 Levee Study, and it started after the 93 flood. And so that's after the, named after the 7 levee units in the greater Kansas City area. When they did the study after the flooding, they recognized different needs, different level of needs. Some were very minor, some were very major. So they started with the minor ones, of course. And most of those were done with the 65% federal, 35% local match. And so they got through most of those.
and I would indicate some of that was Fairfax Drainage District that did some improvements several years ago.
Yep, Fairfax was part of that, and then the other ones, North Kansas City, Birmingham, and East Bottoms in Kansas City. But the 3 that they didn't get to are the ones that mostly directly affect us and our system and our community, and they border the Kansas River, and that would be the CID, the Central Industrial District Levee Unit, the Armourdale Levee Unit, and the Argentine Levee Unit. And thank you. And so when they started this, those were estimated to be, the estimated cost of these is $450 million. So you can think about that. If it was 65% federal and 35% local, we were in the over, 120 to 150 million range. And everyone agreed there wasn't really a path forward because we weren't going to be able to come up with that money. So we kind of started down a different path. And then through a coalition that was campaigning with our delegates and also working with the Corps of Engineers, in 2018, they changed this classification to be fully federally funded. So I just want to make sure, going through all that, because I've heard different misunderstandings that people think this is like a grant program, and why do we have to come up with any money as a local sponsor? The reality is we're not really having to come up with very much money. It is federally funded, but the previous commitments we made and the previous money we spent, we're not going to get that back. Some of the ongoing costs will be reimbursed. Some minor ones won't be. Some of the costs that won't be reimbursed are what they call betterments. And those are desires and improvements that we've come up with and requested as part of the project, but it doesn't really fit into the Corps' basic objective of the project. So when we look at, say, one of our pump stations, their charge is to replace it with a pump station with the exact same capacity, with the exact same capabilities of what we have. And so for us, when we look at those and we think that's a great opportunity, we can double the capacity, triple the capacity for pennies on the dollar, basically. Anyway, I'll talk more about that, but those are the types of things that if we don't come up with the money, if we don't agree to pay for those betterments, they'll just do what they see fit to protect the public from the river flooding and then not do the enhancements.
Which is why we're here tonight, is we're getting ready to start on some of those things that are tied into that. You've already approved the first betterment, which is the Strong Avenue pump, for us to proceed with that. And the reason that we did that was mostly stormwater on our side, not the river flooding. So just to understand, these are intertwined. So that's when you'll see us trying to do a betterment generally, is because of it intertwines with our system on the stormwater side, not just the river levy side of things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, their charge is to protect the landward side from the river flooding and the rainfall that falls on the land behind the levee. They call that inland drainage, interior drainage, and that's not their prime concern. So since we've got the map up here, this same exhibit basically is in your packet. It does have a table of some interesting stats that you might look at when you get a chance. How many miles and some other fun facts. I just want to point out, when we talk Argentine, this Argentine unit, we all, kind of think of Argentine down here, but on the levee unit, it goes all the way around out to the west side of Argentine. The Armadale starts up here near 635, runs all the way down around and comes down and includes where it ties in down Fairfax Drainage District. And then CID unit comes down, and there's actually a CID in Kansas unit, and then there's a part of it that goes on over in Missouri. So when we're at these meetings, KCMO is part of the team as well, because they have an interest in the levee unit, and then a lot of their area is protected by the levee as well. So here's just a rough schedule. You can kind of see, let me go back to this real quick. So the way the Corps is delivering this project is they're doing the Argentine is one project, one phase, and they're calling it phase one. And then they break out the pump stations as like a phase 1A, and then the levee raise and flood walls as a phase 1B. And then Armadale and CID, and they did that because they had already started on Argentine when this got federally approved. They had not started on Armadale or CID yet, so they've grouped these together. And so for a lot of the activities, they'll be done simultaneously, whether it be the pump stations or the levee raise. So when you go to the schedule, you can look here. That's why it's broken out. Here's the Argentine activities up here. So the pump station piece is up top, the levee raise and flood walls down here. So the blue and the yellow is kind of the pre-construction work, design, contracting, and then the green is actual construction, when we'll expect to see some more field activities out there. So you can see on the pump station, they're going to award that this fall, and there'll be that's a design build process that they're going to deliver that through. So potentially we could see someone out this fall doing some preliminary work down in the Argentine area for those pump stations. The levee flood wall raise in Argentina is going to be design bid build. So they'll do a full design, then they'll put it out to bid, and then they'll start construction. And so the field activities for that don't start for a whole nother year.
And the Argentine unit is the one that we've already talked about with the pump station that we're doing a betterment on to do the stormwater or the inland side of things. So just so you understand, that is going to lead out most quickly, which is an area, obviously, we've had significant issues with inland flooding.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on the schedule unless you guys want to. I just really just wanted to point out, you can see all these activities are all starting middle to late next year, and they go on for a couple years. So that's going to be a lot of activities going on. So where we're at right now, they call it LERDs. It's a lot of preliminary work that has to be done before construction can happen and even kind of shape final design. And LERD stands for land acquisition, easements, right-of-way relocations for like utility relocations, and disposals for like hazardous material mitigation. So those are, so the,
We have more acronyms, but we'll spare you.
yeah, it's like alphabet soup sometimes. Some of those LERDs, normally a LERD would all be, the cost be borne by the local sponsor, and then it comes off of that 35% participation. So in this case, a lot of these costs will be reimbursed to us by the Corps, and so we're working on that process to make sure that the turnaround time when we have to put money out to when they reimburse us is minimal.
So with the full federal funding, part of that means that the private acquisitions that we have to make, which are limited on Argentine, there may be a difference when we get to Armourdale, but those will be reimbursed. That was part of the reason when we came in May, we asked for, May or June, I can't remember which it was now, I'm sorry. We came and asked for money in addition to just the betterment on the pump station, because we needed a revolving set of dollars to be able to pay and then get reimbursed, if that makes sense, so.
Oh, no, you're good. And just, the highlights are on here, just to give you an order of magnitude. In Argentine, we've identified that we're going to impact about 20 parcels. In Armourdale and CID, it's quite a bit more. It's up to about 130. We're getting ready to start on the utility relocations. That's probably about everything on this slide.
And then just to highlight the 20 parcels, this doesn't mean that we're going to be buying all of these. It may simply mean that we needed a temporary easement to access the work that they're going to do on the levees. And then when we get into the other 130 on Armourdale and CID, I don't have the understanding of that, but what we do have is a fairly good understanding of Argentine at this point, and it's a limited outright purchase, which is, for us, something that is needed to be able to expedite this project in the timeline that the Corps wants to do it in, which is 5 years. And it's also something that saves us from a lot of negotiations, so.
On the pump station betterments, so far, so when the Corps did their initial study, they identified 2 pump stations. Well, initially, they identified 1 pump station to be outright replaced, and that was the Argentine pump station, located where the number 1 is. And then they were going to do some modifications at the Strong Avenue pump station. That changed once they got into design and realized structurally they had to replace the Strong Avenue 2. But before I really talk about those, I just want to clarify, because some of the names we use are kind of misleading. So like the Argentine pump station, this number 1, Argentine is, the Argentine area that we call it is down here, and then there's BNSF Railroad. The Argentine pump station is actually quite a ways north near the island. I call it Code Island. I don't know if that's official or not, but anyway. Somebody told me that's what it's called. And so that's kind of like the Santa Fe area, the East Santa Fe, but that's the Argentine pump station. And so that facility is actually owned and operated by Call Valley Drainage District. And then we have this stormwater flood pump station number 2, which is at like 2,400 strong. That's called stormwater number 2, but it's in Argentine, right? On Strong Avenue, but it's stormwater 2. And then we have the Strong Avenue pump station, which isn't on Strong Avenue. It sits down on the levee. So when we start talking about these things, it does get confusing sometimes, because someone assumes when you're talking about one, you're really talking about the wrong one. So anyway, as I go through this, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew which ones we were talking about. So the first betterment that we identified is the Argentine pump station up here, which has they all have a fairly low level of service. So when the river's down low and if we get a rain event locally, if the river's down low, gravity flows out and life is pretty good for everybody. When the river level's up high and we get a storm event, we can't pump as much as what can go out by gravity, and so it starts backing up and compounding, the localized flooding issues. So those were some of the needs. When they started talking about doing a replacement of this pump station, we asked the question, well, what if we added capacity there? That's what we really need. We pushed really hard for the Corps to include that in the project, unsuccessfully. So, but they did come back with some costs to do a couple different levels of betterment. And so what we identified was for about a 7% increase in the facility cost, which translates into 1.1 million, we're basically able to double that capacity, which is a pretty good improvement for only bearing about 7% of the cost, or 1.1 million. Similarly, when we got down here to look at Strong Avenue, well, first, we had all kinds of issues with this location. It's in the middle of the levee. That presents a lot of risk and a lot of access issues. And so they've identified an alternate location, which is moving forward, which is over here at the old KC Structural Steel, that parcel east of the South Patrol, which is we see as a big improvement for us operationally. And then as far as the betterment goes on that one, for 1.4 million, which is about 9-10% of what we estimated the facility cost to be, we're adding 225%. So we're basically tripling the capacity of that pump station, which it gets us to a 5-year level of pumping. So basically, even when the river's up, we would be able to handle a 5-year storm event there and keep up with it. Furthermore, there's another improvement. I don't want to go in too much in the weeds on you, but the old pump station went out here. This is actually going to take flow off of this gravity line that comes out and dump it up in a different line. So basically, even when the river's down, we should be able to, over time, increase our dewatering capabilities down in Argentine. So that's a long-term benefit that we'll see better localized flood protection down there. A third betterment that we identified is you can kind of see 2 lines under the river here. Those are inverted siphons that go under the river. When they installed those, they put 2 in. One is connected, one is not connected to anything. It's a redundant line just in case. So since the Corps is going to be in here and they're going to have all this dug up, we're going to go ahead and have both ends of those connected. It'll increase our capacity so we can send more flow to the plant. And all that is also consistent with the overflow control plan. So down the road, when we do some type of sewer separations, we can send more flow to the plant and reduce overflow volume. So that helps us with our EPA commitments and compliance. So any questions on those? And then, yeah, no, it's pretty boring stuff for most people. The progress update here, just to date, we've got a lot signed. Like I said, the design pump station project is out on the street. They're going to award that here in the next few weeks. Upcoming events is just moving forward with formalizing agreements and real estate activities and doing some VE study and reviews on the levee raises.
And late last week, we received the notice to proceed with acquisition or easements, temporary, permanent, or otherwise. So on the Argentine units, so we will be moving forward. That's why the next item is on the agenda.
Thank you.
Trenton, before you get away from us, just going back to those 3 areas, or those 3 pump stations, I should say. So I know I know they're going to be construction projects, but they don't appear to be terribly disruptive to either commercial or residential around there?
The pump stations probably will be fairly limited because a lot of that work, like on the Argentine pump station, is down right at the levee. They are, as part of that, Caw Valley Drainage District has a maintenance shop down here, and they have to relocate that, and they're moving it up somewhere up here. But yeah, all that construction's really on the riverbank, on the levee itself. It's kind of out of sight. You know, there'll be some coordination activities with BNSF down there, of course. All the work over here is really isolated. You're right, not very much impact. This will be a little more visible over here on that site. The biggest issue, I think, through all the construction is probably going to be when they get to the levee raises and they're bringing in earth, dirt,
And that'll be a lot of
concrete, and
traffic.
yeah, and we're working on that, talking with Troy and working with the Corps, how we can minimize those impacts to the public, to our infrastructure. And they're looking at alternatives, how to keep, we do have a borrow pit identified out west, and how we could keep those, if it's trucks, keep them off the roads so they don't degrade the roads and also clog it up with traffic and nuisance. I know one thing they're looking at is, can they put it on a barge and bring it down the river? You know, nothing's been finalized yet, though.
Right, and that again, that type of work we wouldn't see until probably late 2020 is the soonest we'd see that work start. So we'll be coming back to you. That's why Trenton was saying we'd like to be here on a regular basis so that we can share those things as we define what they are. And again, this is one of those projects that we thought we'd spend 25 years on and are being asked to turn it in 5 years. So, but I think so far what we're seeing is really great cooperation between all the levels of government. And we will start meeting with the public on the Argentine units here in August. So, and then also with all of our utilities, those meetings are being scheduled. So luckily, minimal impact on the Argentine unit. Again, can't say that definitively yet for Armourdale CID.
Okay, thanks. Are there questions from anybody on the committee here? All righty.
Other than just a comment saying, I know that we gripe about the federal government a lot, but in this case, thank you to them for coming forward, because I don't know when we would have been able to do this because of the expense. It's really expensive. So thank you, and thanks for your hard work.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that's an information-only item, and the very next item is our assistant county counselor here to talk with us about some needed survey work we need to work on this Kansas City levy project. So, James, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. The resolution that we have before you covers both phases of the project. The Argentine phase that Melissa pointed out, ready to go with surveys, find out what property needs to be acquired. The resolution also covers phase 2, the bigger 130 parcels we expect to be affected. November, getting the notice to proceed on that project.
Move to approve item number 2, resolution.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on this item. Any questions or comments from the public? Okay, roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman? Aye. Philbrook?
Aye.
Markley? Aye. Kane? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye, and that item passes. Okay, thank you very much. Item 3 is an amendment on our definition of electric assisted scooters, and we have another assistant counsel, Mr. Waters, here on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner. Items 3 and 4 are just minor amendments to our existing electric scooter ordinances to bring them into compliance with the new state law that went into effect on July 1st. Probably the biggest change is that in the state law, while they authorize cities to allow scooters, they did prohibit them on state highways. For us, that means that they will not be allowed on Rainbow, 7th Street, or Leavenworth Road. So we'll have to educate the public when these come to our cities to make sure you are allowed to cross those roads to get where you're going. So you could go from one side road and cross the Rainbow, but wouldn't actually be able to drive on those. But other than that, just a minor definitional change.
So item 3 is amending the state highway language.
Name the,
Item 3, I believe, has the definition itself. Our existing definition was very close to what the state ended up using, but I just changed it just so it would match completely. And then,
second.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second on this item. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson. Bynum.
Aye, and that item passes. And then item 4.
and item 4 just makes it clear that the scooters are not allowed on state highways. So we added that change.
Second.
Motion and a second on this item. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. Thank you. Item 5, we have an agreement with Piper Schools regarding additional improvements related to the new school being built at 131st and Leavenworth Road. We have yet another member of our legal team, and Troy with our engineering. Okay. Mr. Shaw.
Let Susan introduce it and then I'll.
My name's Susan Alig with the legal department. This is an interlocal because it's between the city and the school district, which is why we're bringing it to you all for approval. And Troy is very familiar with the details of who's going to pay for what.
So I just basically went through the agreement, broke it down, kind of set it up so you could see it in general, who's paying for what. I'm not going to read these slide by slide because you've got it in front of you, save you that time. But this is basically the project that the unified government is building. So this is the intersection project that was approved in the budget a couple years ago, I believe. That design has started on, and then the little box at the bottom, the little blue blocks, is a storm sewer culvert crossing that the school district is paying for, but it is being built by the unified government because we want to build it the way we want to and make sure that it is acceptable for future use, basically. So, questions?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on this item. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman. Aye. Philbrook.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Kane. Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye, and that carries. Thank you very much. And our last item. This is an agreement with Edwardsville regarding improvements on 4th Street with our Quiet Zone project.
Yes, sir. So this is related to the quiet zone improvements that have already been passed by this commission. However, Edwardsville would like to make some additional improvements to a portion of their streets there, and for cost savings, it just made sense to go ahead and bid that work while we're doing the quiet zone improvements as well. Edwardsville will pay for all of these additional improvements that go above and beyond what is necessary for the crossings.
Yeah, these just show the 3 crossings where we'll be doing the quiet zone. The improvements Patrick mentioned are on 4th Street, and we have it broken out in the agreement, and it will be broken out in the bid as well as to who pays for what. So this agreement, like I said, is for those and then also for us to work in Edwardsville.
Commissioner Kane?
We voted on this some time ago. It's a couple of years.
Yeah.
So when will we start construction?
At the latest, we are planning to start construction next spring. We have agreements with the railroad that still need to be signed by the railroad and then signed by Mr. Bach. And also, we have an agreement with Bonner Springs, which is very similar to this that we're working on right now, getting signed as well. So at the latest, next spring, we'll start our work. I can't control the railroad schedule, but that's when we'll do ours at the latest if we can't get any agreements any sooner than that. So.
By the way, thanks for working so well together, all 3 entities, because it was a little bit of a conversation through all of this. So thanks for hanging in on that.
We're trying.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on this item. Roll call, please.
Roll call. Groneman? Aye. Philbrook? Aye. Markley? Aye. Kane? Aye. Johnson?
Aye.
Bynum?
Aye, and that carries. Thank you both very much, and that concludes our Public Works and Safety meeting. Thank you, Tom Groneman, for being here. And this, I'm sure it was. This committee is adjourned, and we will move into Administration and Human Services.
All right, I will now call the meeting of Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. We want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Public comment is welcome. Anyone wishing to speak on any item on the agenda may do so when the item is up for discussion. Please come to the microphone for accurate recording purposes. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Philbrook?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Kane? Bynum?
Here,
Markley?
Here, we have minutes from our May 20th meeting.
move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes have been approved, and we have one item on our agenda tonight, and Terry is here to tell us about that item.
This is a pretty straightforward grant in that we will be asking our female clients at the health department a series of questions, and if they are identified as having substance abuse, then they will be referred for interventions. We're working with the UMKC, and they will do the evaluation part of the grant to determine if the ladies did get an intervention, why yes, why no, did they even go? So it's paying for staff time to be involved in the project.
Questions?
Second.
A motion and a, oh,
Question. So, okay, that's all well and good. So what are you going to do with it when you find out?
What am I going to do with it? What-
I mean, they're doing this, to get some information back, but, what kind of data are we really getting? What are we doing, in action to the questions that they're getting answered?
they get the services, right, as part of this package?
Correct. They
are going
will be interviewing the women, and if our counselors deem them to be high risk, then they'll be referred for the service. We won't do a service at the health department, but they'll get the service at the Heartland Regional Alcohol and Drug Assessment Center,
Okay, so you're basically kind of the,
the middleman.
okay. Yeah. The door to,
Correct.
okay. And then, and this lasts how long, 1 year, 2 years?
1 year.
1 year? Okay, thank you.
All right, I had a motion and a second. Those are still on the table. Any other questions? Roll call, please.
Roll call. Philbrook?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Kane? Bynum?
Aye,
Markley?
Aye, and that concludes our meeting. Thanks for your attendance. Thank you, Terry.
thank
We
you.
haven't seen you in a while.
We've been missing you and all of your breaks.